Seems like we've all sidled in at this point, so yeah, why don't we kick things off? Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Lucien Dodge. I'm a voice actor. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you. Elliot Craig, yeah, my boy. I'm a voice actor of various anime games. I try to do as much of it as possible. I also do some script adaptation and voice direction for anime. As far as voice direction goes, the most recent thing that is most near and dear to my heart is Delicious in Dungeon. I had a ton of fun on that. So yeah, this is the Voiceover 101 workshop. So this is really your chance to ask me anything that's burning questions about the business, the craft, how I do what I do. You can, ask me about voiceover projects or writing or directing. Really, anything is game. If we may or may not get to it, depending on how many questions we burn through, but I do have some scripts here to possibly have people read, kind of as an audition. How many people, just, no pressure, how many people would be interested possibly in volunteering to read? Wow, okay, most of you, okay, gotcha. Understood, all right, cool. So, now I will say, I will also be on a panel tomorrow with Erica, like the voiceover workout or something like that, where we may do a lot more of that. So if you don't get to this or don't get to too many people reading scripts today, please come tomorrow and we'll do a lot more of that from the get-go. But I would like to start with questions, if anyone has a question. Yes, sir.
You say you work with games, correct?
Yes.
I noticed that certain games that I play, like I play games like Persona 5 and Tropical Steel, and I know there are certain functions like when you record a character, and there's times when after you make the game, the players they press buttons to repeat voices and stuff, like when you have to like play voice and just press the same button.
Right, certain moves or something.
Just record it one time, or why does that work?
Yeah, so typically, like for those kind of typically battle prompts, right, where you have the character cast a spell, let's say, and they say, I've got you, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I noticed in Persona 5 there's like a log where you just play voice and you just press A.
Oh, right, like the system voice kind of, right. Yeah, and it plays them all, right.
Yeah.
So typically when we're recording games, it's broken down into sections. So first, let's say, we'll do the story-based stuff. So it'll be pretty chronological, and we work through the story, as you would expect, from top to bottom. Then once that's finished, we move typically to battle prompts, and that's like reactions or call-outs, special attacks, stuff like that. And typically, we're asked to do it maybe 2 or 3 times, and then they pick the one they like. Or sometimes, depending on how the game is programmed, if there are variations, they'll pick 2 or however many they're programming it with. So if they want a fireball, but they know it's going to play multiple times, the player's going to be using that attack a lot. So they programmed slightly different reads on the fireballs. So it might be fireball. Fireball, fireball, fireball. Just they'll give a couple of variations in the game so that you're not hearing fireball, 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 because that gets repetitive really quick. It's pretty common with earlier games when voiceover was much. Well, not necessarily just cutscenes. Even again, I'm just talking about like the battle stuff. If they would, you would proc a special move, and they would say, an attack or whatever. It used to be they would maybe just have one version, and you'd hear it a lot. But then people got wise, and they know people find that obnoxious after the 70th time you hear it. So then they started asking for, okay, give us a little different read on it. But yeah, as far as how it's recorded, yeah, you usually just read it, again, maybe if they're just taking the one version, you do it maybe 2-3 times and they pick their favorite, or if they're multiple ones, then you multiply that by however many. So yeah, pretty straightforward. That's how it works. Yes?
So I know in other areas of the voiceover industry, they're moving more towards the home studios. How true is that for the anime and gaming side of the voiceover industry?
So during the pandemic, that was, that kind of changed how we did things a lot. I mean, recording from our home studio setups is already pretty commonplace as far as auditions are concerned, but once the pandemic happened, and it wasn't really safe to go into studios, they relied on us a lot more to actually record professional grade audio from our home studio setup. So a lot of us had to kind of either really upgrade our studios or tweak it slightly, to make sure it was on the level of a professional product. Now I will say, I don't know how it is on all parts of the world, but at least as far as Los Angeles is concerned, we have kind of gone back for the most part to going back into studios. And now it's kind of up to the actor's discretion if they would rather record something from home. But I will say, I think a lot of studios prefer you go in because it's just easier to quality control the recordings. It's really difficult when you have a large cast, let's say, and if you're recording 30, 50 actors, and if they're all recording in separate booths, their home studio setups, it's all going to be a little bit different, and then it's the engineer or the mixer has to really try to work extra time to make it all blend and sound like it's in the same space. It's a lot to ask, and it's just kind of obnoxious. So I think now certainly studios would rather you come back and record in the studio. It's just, and I will say as an actor myself, I prefer recording in the studio. I'm not very far from where most of the shows and games are recorded, so it's not like some people, they're really far out, they have to drive like an hour or more in rush hour both ways, and that I get, like, especially if you're only recording a couple lines or something. I would completely understand if you don't want to, you'd rather not come in and you just want to do that from home. I would completely understand. But I'll say for me, because I'm pretty close to most of the studios, it's just nicer to go in and have someone else worry about the audio levels and if you're too loud or that they can adjust that, and you can just worry about the acting, which I prefer. I can engineer myself, but it's another thing I have to worry about, and if something goes wrong or if my internet gets poopy or whatever, it's just extra stress. So going to a place, I can just worry about what I do, which is the acting part, which I prefer. Thank you. Yes?
So how often are you making like audible grunts and voices, and how important
A lot.
is it to practice that? And do you have any like advice for this?
Yeah, you excuse me, you certainly, there is quite a bit of that in both anime and games. I mean, again, especially in games, there's usually a whole section where that's all you're doing. You're getting hit, you're hitting people, you're taking a bullet to the knee, you're taking an arrow to the knee, if you prefer. Whatever it is, you're getting lit on fire, you're getting electrocuted, you're getting revived. All of these sounds that you hear in, again, typically games, but it happens in anime too. We have to perform all of those. As far as practicing, I think the important thing when it comes to those sounds for me is specificity. So it's not, you're getting hit. Okay, in what way? Is it like a light kind of shove, something like that, or are you getting wailed on by like a huge sledgehammer or whatever? You're getting stabbed. Okay, where am I getting stabbed? Am I getting stabbed in the shoulder? It's going to have a certain different connotation, that's my getting stabbed. But if you're getting stabbed in the gut, it might be like more like it's going to have a slightly different body character to it. So kind of if you can use your imagination to be really specific, I'm getting hit in the face. Okay, is it a hook right across the face? Are you getting uppercut? Are you getting right to the square to the nose. That will help give the sounds different, again, a certain weight, a grounding to them. So it's not just a generic, I got hit, that's not believable, right? Trying to be specific in your imagination about what's going on, and then just fully committing to it. As far as practice, for practice, I used to honestly put in my, this shows a little bit how old I am, my subtitled VHS tapes. And then I would dub, full episodes of whatever show I was watching, and the fight scenes included were very helpful in trying to follow the motion and seeing, oh, he gets hit, and then he flies, and there's the arc, and then he lands on the ground, and following the animation and trying to create a sound that matches the, what you're seeing was great practice. So all of you are, you all have anime at your disposal. You could all do that. You could all just watch something and try to, turn the sound off and do it yourself. Try to put in the voice what you think would match with the picture. Let me go here.
So how do you you have so many different types of characters in voice, like Felix from Fire Emblem versus Kenji from Bingo. So how much do you know about the script or the character in general before you start voice acting, so you can come up with a voice?
Usually it's very preliminary info. If I can grab a picture, like a visual reference of what the character looks like, that can just by itself, without knowing anything else, give me a ton of info. So let's use Felix and Kenji as an example. Looking at just a picture, even if I didn't know any info about his backstory and any of that, just looking at a picture of Felix and seeing, kind of how he's severe, he's serious, gives me an idea of how old he looks. So that gives me sort of a basis. Whereas, Kenji, he's got this kind of bright, innocent, kind of young boy look or whatever. So already I'm kind of imagining what they look like just based on how, or what they sound like based on just on how they look from the picture. And then if I can get a little bit of extra info, oh, he's, again, he's got a grudge because this trauma happened to him, or he's just a happy-go-lucky boy and he loves food and stuff like that. It just gives me a little bit of extra ammunition. But the picture just by itself is really helpful. I'd say really important. And obviously, for anime, certainly you are seeing them in motion, and you are also hearing the performance of the original Seiyu, a Japanese voice actor. So that's also just going to give you a lot of information about, okay, this is clearly the direction of the character. So now how do I do my thing and just kind of fit it in to this mold and honor what's kind of been made already, essentially. Thank you. Yes?
So the voiceover industry has a bit of a reputation of being very competitive.
Yes.
What would you say is the biggest barrier to entry in the industry for non-professionals?
The biggest barrier, I think, is exactly that. It's very competitive, and as a result, it's very difficult to break in initially, because there's a lot of people who are already doing it, a lot of very good people who are doing it. You really have to sort of pay your dues and be willing to spend a while to make your reputation known and to prove to people, I'm good, I'm reliable, I can do the thing. But that takes quite a while sometimes. And I mean, people are, always kind of looking for fresh talent, but there's only so many new, breakout, voice actors in the industry. So again, it's just a matter of being patient, and you got to work really hard in the meantime to make sure your skills are really, razor sharp, so that if that, they always say it's preparation meets opportunity. So when you make the happen to make the right connection, and they say, hey, I have a thing for you, that you have the skill set to back it up, because otherwise they won't call you back, and you know, it'll be really hard from that point on. But yeah, really hard to break in, takes quite a while. But yeah, absolutely. Let me see if there are. Yes, over here.
How did you get started and why?
I got started, funny enough, I was a very shy kid, but somehow the school I went to, it was always, we always put on a theater production at the end of every year, well, whether you did theater or not, it's just something you did. And I kind of discovered through doing that playing a character was very liberating. It was almost like a shield, where I didn't have to feel so looked at, or yeah, I didn't feel as shy, because it was the character doing it. It's not me that they're scrutinizing or looking at, it's a character. And being able to express myself that way was a lot of fun. So I started pursuing acting on stage, and then around the time I got into anime, I'm watching anime and I'm watching dubs, and at some point I recognized a voice in a show as being from another show. And then I kind of put two and two together and went, oh, there's a person doing the voice of this character. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Well, who does that? How does that work? Who are these people who, you know? So then I went down a rabbit hole of finding out about voice acting, and I kind of started doing it on my own, just again, like recording myself, practicing to my anime, and I was like, this is really fun. Because you can kind of, as long as you can do the voice of whatever it is, a troll or a little dust mite or whatever it is, as long as you can create the sound of that character, you can kind of be anything. And that was really liberating, and the imagination involved. So I just thought, well, that's like, I already like acting because of X, Y, and Z, but this is almost like an extension, like this is even better. So this is what I want to do more than anything. So that's how that ended up happening. You sir, actually, let me go to Senpai here.
Thank you. So my question is, what protections would you like to see in the industry, whether it's against either some voice actors not getting paid the same amount as other voice actors, or even against protections against basically AI?
Well, some of you may know that there is a whole thing going on right now with our actors union, SAG-AFTRA. We are striking against video games or certain companies, mainly on the basis of AI, which is really important, and it's certainly a scary idea to a lot of us that at some point, without our permission, they could just use our voice, run into an algorithm, and then spit out performances and not use us. It is a really kind of terrifying prospect. So hopefully, there'll be more work, and hopefully things turn out well for us in the negotiations. But yeah, that's certainly a big thing. I hope gets resolved, and also just I think not just acting, but I think AI protections just across the board, in the industry in general. I think it's pretty important. So just on a whole nationwide basis, hopefully AI is something that our legislatures look into seriously, because it is an issue, and people do stand to lose their jobs. People already have, and it's really sucky. So certainly would hope things go well in that department. I'm not really sure. I mean, of course, equal pay. I mean, there is a difference, right? Like we're not in, and I don't think it'll ever happen. We're not going to get paid the same amount as Brad Pitt, right? If he goes and does a voiceover job, that's just a whole other enchilada entirely. But there are certain minimums, like under our union, as far as pay goes. So I'm not really sure. Certainly AI is the big one, I think. Hopefully that that goes okay. Fingers crossed. Yes. Yes.
My question was, when you're doing intensive voices, things that are really strange voices, like monster voices or fighting voices, favorite warm-up routine? Or just what product you use?
Well, not an ad, but there is, exactly, not sponsored, but there is kind of a cough syrup which became kind of popular amongst us voice actors. I think a voice actor named Fred Tatasciore, who's one of his big roles is playing the Hulk in one of the animated series, and he's just got a big, he's got a big booming voice. But even as the Hulk, he has to scream a lot. And he sort of recommended this Chinese throat syrup, kind of cough syrup that he discovered called Nimjam Pepakoa. So that's like in extreme cases where it's like, oh God, it's like really hard and I still have to power through another hour or whatever. I'll default to that, but certainly preventative measures are the best. So just making sure you're drinking enough water, making sure you're not screaming first thing in the day. If I know it might be intensive, I'll do kind of basic, kind of singing or humming warm-ups, just kind of, really silly sounding stuff, but just stuff to kind of get the cobwebs out of there. Just kind of going down and up the range, and it's funny, was anyone here for the Toshio Furukawa panel by any chance? Maybe not. One of the very long-time Seiyu, Japanese voice actor guests here. I was checking out his panel, and he talked about some warm-up exercises that he does, mostly pertaining to laughter. You're just kind of, stuff like that. I don't do quite the same vowel things that he does, but just I think laughter is really great. Or it's funny sometimes, just by chance, I'll be talking to like my mom on the phone or whatever before going into a session and having a spirited chat, and even that is really helpful. So yeah, just kind of just use your voice. Make sure you're not using your voice for the first time when you go in for that vocally intensive session. Would be my recommendation. Yes.
Do you have any improv tips for anime games? Who's the top 5?
Improv. I'm going to be honest. Improv. It's one of those things I probably really should have and maybe still should taken classes in, because it is very. I think it's really helpful. Because it does come up. If you're doing like a quirky comedy American animated series where you're in a room with other actors, kind of like a podcaster, old-time audio play or something like that. And you can get to play off of each other. It's cool to have improv skills for that, to make jokes, snap. Or if a line's not working, you kind of think, oh, well, what else would work here? I don't know, it's just like a really good skill set to have. I don't consider myself really a good improv guy, but I guess from doing this for as many years as I have, there are certain things that I've gotten kind of good at as far as troubleshooting, what would the characters say? I don't think it's not quite, the phrasing isn't quite right. Maybe, I've done the character enough times, and what feels natural? Maybe you would say this. You kind of spitball back and forth. But honestly, no, I'll say, even though I take my advice, not, do as I say, not as I do, but I would say take improv classes. It's just a really good thing to know. It'll only help you think on your feet. Because even a lot of the time, we have to create characters and performances very quickly on the spot. Sometimes we go in for something, and they'll say, okay, here's your character, and you're seeing it for the first time. Here's what he is, here's how old he is, his kind of overall personality. What kind of voice? Let us hear, what you would do with that. And you just kind of do it right on the spot. So if you've got improv kind of chops or training, I think it can only help with that kind of stuff. If you can't take a class for whatever reason, I guess there are ways, you can find some dialogue, from a book or something, or a TV show, and then just, give yourself sort of exercises. Oh, well, what if you were 10 years younger? Okay, now he's like a burly, New York smoker guy. Okay, what would that be like? And just kind of experiment and see what you can do on the spot, just instant. Let's see, in the green.
So what is,
what you just went over kind of fed into my question here. What is a typical audition process like? Are you given reference material of the previous actor, the original Seiyu? Are you told about the character, or you just blind read, get it different inflections and whatnot, see what you think? And also, do you have any direction or input on dialogue choices or anything, any of the writing aspects as a voice actor?
Of the writing aspects,
Yeah,
exactly.
the dialogue, the character lines. Want to make a change, or does it feel
I see.
natural, or you want to use this inflection and so on?
Understood. Gotcha. So the first part of your question was kind of just general advice about auditioning or how auditions work. So typically we'll get sent a script, and there'll be a little, character name, and maybe a short paragraph blurb about, this is Todd, and he was in the military, and now, he's come back home, and, they'll give you a little backstory. Or maybe they might mention some vocal qualities, kind of a smooth, warm voice, kind of 20, 25 years of old. Years of old, that's his phrase. So just something to kind of help you sort of picture, okay, so what would that look like, and what kind of guy would that sound like? It's not unlike if you're reading a book, right? And there's a character's introduced in the story, and they sort of describe him. Oh, he had wavy, long blonde hair, and a soft, it kind of goes into a description about them. You kind of start to build up an idea of what they sound like, right? I would imagine. So you kind of do the same thing as a voice actor. You kind of read the specs, as they're called, kind of description of the character. And then you read the dialogue, and you see if that kind of communicates any kind of voice to you, and a cadence and a behavior. And then in my opinion, you just try to make what you're hearing in your head come out of your mouth, which is easier said than done. It takes a lot of practice. But yeah, so then I'll work on it. I'll run through it maybe a few times until it sort of feels right, like I'm hitting the right acting beats, and I'm getting the emotion that's going on. Sometimes the first take, it's like okay, but you feel like it's maybe a little forced. You're, oh yeah, kind of that phrase I said, I couldn't quite see where it was going, so I felt a little stiff or whatever. So I just kind of like to run it, the whole thing, like a few times, so it starts to feel, kind of natural. And then once I get to that point, I try, this is also easier said than done, once it feels right in the pocket, I try to stop. What's easy for me, and I know other actors and super perfectionist artists do this, is they really overthink, or they really, I don't like the way I said that word, or I don't know, should I do it like a semitone higher? I can really be super picky about my work. So sometimes I go down a rabbit hole, and I end up going, okay, 4th time, 5th time, no, let's go again, 6th time, 7th time. Oh my God, am I even in the right ballpark anymore? Does any of this sound any good anymore? I have no idea. Let me listen back to the 2nd take I did. Oh yeah, that was fine. I'll send that in. It got too rehearsed, which is a real danger for me. So yeah, so that's it, kind of generally, a little snapshot into the audition process and how I work through it. And then again, for me, because I have a home studio set up, I'm doing this at home. They send the emails, the scripts, the auditions. I record it in an MP3. I send it back to my agent or whoever it is I got the audition from. And then I try to forget about it. I try not to dwell. I don't go, oh, it's 3 days after I sent it in. Did I not get it? Or did I get it? Or are they still thinking? Try not to think. Just forget it ever happened. And if it happens, it's cool. But otherwise, just assume you didn't get it. And that's kind of the mentality. Because again, someone mentioned there's a lot of competition. And most of the time, you're not going to get it. So you try to get in a healthy mindset of just, what will be, and let it go, and if it's meant to me, it'll come back to you. As far as whether it's okay to change lines in a script to make it feel more natural or whatever, I think you have to apply some discretion. I will say, 100% honesty, there are some scripts that I get which are just bad. It's just like, it's very kind of literally translated. It's very, very Google Translate-y, and it's just stiff, and sometimes it barely, like, it's like, that's not even something a human being would say, or they wouldn't use that word, So sometimes if it's that bad, I personally have no issue, loosening it up and knowing, well, I know what they mean, and so I'm going to use this word, or I'm going to say it this way. Because that's really what's important, is they're listening for the performance, and does it feel like the character, and he's in the moment. That's really the important thing. Then, are you saying every word, 100% word for word as on the script? When it comes to that level of mediocrity. Now, if you're dealing with something that clearly has been, how do I want to say this? There are good scripts which may have been written in a different cadence than you're used to speaking, but that's because of the way the character speaks. If it's because of let's take Felix for example, because it's kind of a period piece, or he's from a certain lineage or noble standing, he's going to speak or use certain words or phrase things in a certain way that we wouldn't necessarily do in like a modern setting. Take Lord of the Rings or anything fantasy, right? You wouldn't necessarily want to take that and go, oh well, I wouldn't say it that way, so I'm going to use a different. It's like, well, but that's how the character talks, so you want to honor that. So there's a difference. So you kind of want to tune into that, I would say. And in that case, I would say try your best to stick close to how it was written, and see if you can dial in the character's cadence, and that may not be your own, but that's not the point. Your job is to play the character, not to play the character as yourself necessarily. Great, thank you very much. Yes.
So you said that you practice like in front of your TV using VHS.
Yes.
Have you ever had a professional acting coach, and if so, how long have you had them?
Mm-hmm.
The same goes with a professional demo. So how often are you making a professional?
Gotcha. As far as an acting coach is concerned, I wouldn't say there are classes I've taken, and usually they're like one night, meet with this, reputable voice actor or casting director or voice director, come with a bunch of other people for 3 hours, you go up and read a script or two, they give you direction. There's stuff like that I've done.
Is that part of an audition?
It's different from an audition, yeah, because you're not formally auditioning for them. It's more like a workshop, just to kind of practice, and then you get feedback and you try to just grow from that. There's stuff like that I've done. That's a little different from like a long-time acting coach. I can't say I've ever had like a ongoing acting coach. I've had, there's someone I kind of consider my mentor in the business, who imbued a lot of knowledge and gave me a lot of great tips and everything, and has kind of become a good long friend of mine now. But yeah, early on, I got to know this gentleman named Corey Burton, who if you just IMDb him, just when you have a moment, just IMDb Corey Burton, and he has like 4 decades of everything. Brainiac from the Superman Justice League series, Captain Hook for the last 3 decades or however long he's been doing that. Dale from Chip and Dale. He's played so many iconic characters in animation and games. And I kind of got to know him and ask him a lot of questions early on. And so he was a great well of knowledge and advice. But yeah, not quite, it's not like we would do workshops or workouts and like, but I would like send him stuff and he would go, oh yeah, that's really good. Or it's a little forced, I would listen, he'd give me little bits of advice like that. So that's about the closest thing I've kind of had to an acting coach, I'd say. But yeah, Corey. Good old Corey. Been so good to me over the years.
And then about the demos.
Oh yes, demos. So I admittedly probably don't update my demos as often as maybe I should or other people do. It kind of depends on when was the last time I even updated my demo. Maybe even 4 or 5 years or so. It kind of, for me, it's like if I have enough new pieces of work, which I'm happy with, and that's really tricky because again I'm super critical of myself. So it's like that was okay, and that's not even as good as the stuff. It's got to really meet a high criteria for me to sort of exchange it for something else that's on my demo. The way I sort of do my demos is I like to make it very in a cohesive way where it's like one voice is almost indirectly responding to another character. So I just have a very specific way I like to sort of put my demos together. So it takes me a while to kind of get stuff together to a point where I'm like remaking it from scratch. I think the most recent thing I really made from scratch was my commercial demo. I like specifically made with someone because that's an area that I'm not nearly as experienced with. So I'm like, I don't know. You do commercials all the time. You tell me, does this work? Is this good enough? Okay, you direct me and pick the cuts you think are good. So if you go and like to my website and listen to my commercial demo, like that's like the most current thing I ever like made from scratch, I'd say. But yeah, animation, it's like I'll feel it out and I'll say maybe cycle out a new piece once every few years, however I'm feeling or whatnot. Yes. Yes.
So you have a little bit of background in theater, and you also voiceover VHS and stuff. But how did you actually break into the
Oh, let me think back. So, my first role. I mean, let's pick because there's a few different firsts for me. There's like the first time I got paid for a voiceover, which was like a little kind of audio drama skit that this producer was doing, and putting on iPhone. Well, not necessarily iPhones, just your cell phone. You can play these little cell phone skits. And then I would, my first role in anime was actually doing the original Pokemon series. Give a little backstory to me. So I'm originally from upstate New York, and when I knew I wanted to do this as a career, it came down to New York or Los Angeles. And I thought, well, Los Angeles is kind of scary. Like that's far away. That's the other end of the coast. And I don't know how things are going to go. If I go to New York and go there, if things go horribly wrong and it doesn't work out, it's a 5-hour Greyhound bus ride back home, and I can just dust myself off and try again, or whatever. So I said, okay, I'm going to move to New York City. So I had, a little bit before then, I'd made a demo, a CD. now you don't really need CDs anymore. Now it's all MP3s. But at the time, it was customary. You had a CD. So I made a CD with my demos on there, and I was sending them out to every place I could find. Hunting down the addresses, agencies, recording studios, or whatever. And I was sending my demo, and then months passed. Eventually, I moved to New York, and about exactly 1 month after I moved, I got a call from the production studio that recorded Pokemon, saying, "Hey, we got your stuff, and we thought it was really good, and we have wondering if you'd be interested in we have a guest role or whatever on Pokemon," and I'm on the phone playing it cool, like, oh yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah, I would love to or whatever. And yeah, cool. So here's the time, blah blah blah. Here's the studio again. Cool. And I hang up, and then I just kind of stand there, and then I just literally leap directly into the air, and I'm just like, yes. Yeah, very exciting. So that was my first role in an anime. Kind of, really felt significant to me at the time. I was a gym, what do they call it? Like one of the referees. Gym leader. Yeah, well, not a gym, because the gym leaders are who they fight against, right? Yeah. So he was. There's a term for it. What's that?
Elite Four?
No, not only 4. So, do you ever, any of you remember the,
In the Pokemon Origins?
no, that was much later. This was in the original,
Battle Frontier? Was that what it was?
yes, it's Battle Frontier. This was Annabelle. Yes, the Annabelle the Frontier Brain. I was her like battle referee slash. There's like another role I don't think gave him, but yeah, the guy who refereed the fight between Ash and Annabelle. That was my first role in anime, and I think it was 2 episodes.
One of her maidens in Lucy.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't. Then he might have had a different name, but he definitely refereed that fight. So maybe he had a different title though. But that was my first role in anime, and that was very exciting. But then, to be honest, I didn't really work too much from that point on. I did eventually get an agent, and I started going out for commercials because that's a lot of what they do out in New York. Is kind of radio spots and stuff and TV commercials. So I was auditioning for a lot of commercials, and every so often, I'd do a Verizon spot or something like that. But I never worked all that much, to be honest. Very little droplets here and there in the oasis, or in the desert rather. And so it wasn't until I moved to LA on the recommendation of my then agent, who kind of knew what my passion was and that I really liked doing animation and character voices. It wasn't until I moved to LA that it really started to build up momentum. And as far as breaking in, I will say, people say it's all about connections, right? It's who you know. It certainly was the case with me. That I happened to know certain people who were already in the industry who kind of helped me out and referred me and said, "Oh, you should, use this person," or if you're looking for people. I remember one of the first jobs I ever did for, there's a recording studio called Bank Zoom, who I've done quite a lot of work for over the years now. But one of the first jobs I did was in, there's something called a Walla group. It's kind of like background voices in a scene where, if there's like a diner and you hear the, there's like the background murmur or a different, there's a parade of soldiers and they're doing their hurrahs or whatever. It's typically done by a group called like a loop group or a walla group. There's different terms for it. So they were looking for people for a walla group for this Chinese soap opera, very long time running Chinese soap opera, the name of which is escaping me. But they were looking for people to be part of this walla group, and it was, I believe, Christina V, or Valenzuela, who recommended me for this group. And that kind of introduced me to the studio, and then they said, okay, cool, and then they kind of called me in for a general audition, like, let's just hear you read a few other characters to see what you can do. And then they sent me an audition after that, and I booked it, and then I sent me more auditions, and I booked, Waver Velvet and Fate Zero, not too long after that, and Takamu and Excel World, So it kind of just snowballed from there. But that initial period where it's just like, trying to break in, it really helps to have someone vouch for you. And I think, again, that comes from just doing hard work. And you take if you take workshops with other people and you develop friendships with other people who are coming up through the ranks with you, you never know. You never want to, what's the term, cynically make connections and friendships like that because, what can they do for me? But be genuine about it. But you really never know where someone's going to go or who they might work for, and maybe it'll snowball to something for you down the road. So, yes.
How important is an agent, and how do you go about finding a good one?
Ooh, that's a good question and a toughie. How do you find an agent and a good one? Well, certainly you can just by your own, research, kind of Googling, talent agencies in your area or whatever. Like for me, when I sent out the initial batch of demos, there's something called the VoiceOver Resource Guide, you can look into, which had every prominent voiceover agency listed in, New York, Los Angeles, everywhere. And I would just literally go down the list. Here's the agency, here's the address, mail them my demo with a cover letter, whatever. So literally just kind of cold calling or cold submissions. Finding a good agent is a great question. That's a toughie. That comes down to kind of word of mouth. You know, if you hear from other colleagues, let's say if you have other colleagues who are with certain agencies, you can you ask them, hey, well how do you feel? How are you doing with so and so such agent, and how are you liking them? Are they good? And you kind of get feedback. And like, oh yeah, they're great. They're like, they're fine, but I don't feel like they don't think of me or I don't get much stuff or whatever. And so you, through asking around, I kind of pick up just a general sense of like, okay, this place is like everyone talks great. Everyone has only good things to say about this place, including casting directors or whoever. If you hear a lot of glowing reviews about a certain place, you go, okay, that seems like a good place. But I will say, finding like a good agent, and I would even say what's more important is finding the right agent for you, because there are a lot of very reputable, high-profile talent agencies out there, but not all of them are necessarily going to work well with you, or particular talent. For whatever reason, you're not going to see as much material. They're not going to think of you in the same way that you sort of think, the roles you should be going out for. They're not vouching for you like they do other talent. So finding an agent, I think, that you gel with and you think really gets you and understands what you're about and what you're good for. And then you're not just going to be talent number 74 on their list, and whatever, we'll put you in the database and they kind of forget about you. If you really feel like you sort of form like I really like this agent, I feel like that's in some ways more important than are they the best agency in town? And it's like, well, you can be with CAA, the Hollywood talent agency, and not see jack squat, or nothing come of it. So I think really forming again. Relationships is so important. I think that's the most important thing, really. Yes, in the back, sir.
So, would you say maybe like doing independent projects, like say like, there's an independent game or a movie or something like that? Would you say that's a good way to also kind of kickstart like your career?
100%, yeah. Question was, is like independent projects, starting your own projects, your own animation, whatever, is that a good way to sort of kind of show your stuff or get yourself out there? And I'd say absolutely. There's several actors. In fact, one I'm thinking of most prominently, a friend of mine. I don't know if any of you know the Pro ZD, good friend of mine. He kind of started out again doing those Vine skits, right? Just for fun and funny, and even separate from that, he was putting out little audio kind of sort of clips or whatever of him performing characters on a blog or whatever, just to do it. And that definitely snowballed into sort of the kind of fame he has now, and that certainly helped him down the road in agents and reputation and people wanting to hear him on stuff. So I'm not saying that you have to become like internet famous, for it to be, but absolutely there are many examples of indie projects, passion projects that were started and kind of blew up and got a lot of eyes on it. And then people take notice of that, absolutely. So and I think even taking the getting famous or that you'll be noticed by someone because of it. It's just good practice. I mean, I remember early on, I used to do, when I moved to New York, and again, I wasn't working a ton professionally as far as jobs, but I used to do a lot of free projects for NYU students. They would have a class, and as part of their curriculum, they would have to make an audio play. And they would need actors for that. So and they had a little, not Craigslist, but somewhere where you could go and sort of go, hey, I'd like to volunteer to be in your thing. I used to do that for every single NYU student project I could find. And it was just great practice. I still have clips on my demo to this day that is from those projects. because they just turned out so well, and it's like, this is great. This is on the level of a professional project in performance that I'm really happy with. So I still have, at least one clip in particular I can think of that's still from that project all those years ago. So yeah, 100%, definitely worth it. Just check. Yes. Yes.
I know that you voiced a cause of from
Yes.
and you took from DJ
Yes.
I know DJ Page did a lot of iconic scenes in this latest season.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering if you were going to talk about like any fun or memorable like moments you had while voicing either of those characters.
Oh man, so experiences voicing Akaza and Mahito in Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen respectively. Fun kind of memorable experiences. I mean, they're both super fun characters, right? I mean, they both get to be really kind of wild and there's a fun and flourish about them that's just a lot of fun to do. Trying to think specifically. It's funny with Akaza in particular because his introduction was the Mugen Train movie, right? Which I actually wrote the English script for and had been writing the script for before I even was cast as the character. So I will always remember getting the audition for the Akaza while I was writing the script. And it's funny, someone, I think, sir, you had mentioned changing lines or ever in audition scripts. I will say that is one case where they had sent the script with Akaza, but it was kind of like the subtitle, like kind of subtitle script. It wasn't like an adapted script. And I remember thinking, I want to use my script, the one I've been writing, because I feel like it's got a certain flow, and I've worked, kind of the way I write, I adapt scripts for anime is I try to perform the characters myself, like in my head, to give myself a general idea of the pacing and does it sound good, spoken out loud. So I had already been kind of performing the character, just writing his lines. So I already in my mind had a good sense of like, this is what I think the motivations, and this is how I think he would phrase it. So I used my script for the audition. I don't know if that helped or not. It could have, but I kind of remember that specifically. Let me see, Mahito. I mean, gosh, there's just so many fun moments for Mahito, when he's kind of shape-shifted into like a high school girl or, all the times when he kind of shape-shifts into those grotesque kind of creatures or whatever. I remember there's a scene I'm kind of proud of. I remember it was a little different. Tried it out a little bit different than the Japanese, where Mahito's, I think he's doing his domain expansion. And he's opening his mouth, and there's like a strange sound or whatever. There's like a kind of like an inhaling, like a kind of that kind of sound. I was like, I kind of have done that for like strange alien creatures. Like, this is such a creepy character, like it's such a kind of weird moment. What if I tried a little bit of that here? And they kept it in there, which I'm pretty proud of. But yeah, little things like that. And I mean, how can you not love the scene with Adam MacArthur, Yuji, where what the hell are you, Mahito? And he screams back at him, you don't have to shout. I can hear you just fine, or whatever. I remember going, oh, this moment is really. I think even before it had hit, like audiences here, I kind of had seen a little bit ahead, and I was like, oh, this is going to be like really iconic. So I need to like really go all in on this. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. But yeah, just overall, just so fun playing those characters. We may have caught up here. We've got all the questions here. What are we at? Oh, well, 3 minutes. That might be a bit. Yeah, might be a little bit.
Last question.
Yeah, I know.
I guess.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, probably not enough time to really get into scripts, unfortunately. But I would definitely recommend please come to the workout panel, and that's all we'll do, we'll start right with that, and we'll probably try to do rapid fire. But yeah, any other questions?
When and where is that?
When and where's that? Good question. Let me-
It's here tomorrow at lunch.
It is here. Oh, and it's here too. See?
It's right in this room.
Oh, okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
It's part of the, it's one of the only things on my schedule that I'm scheduled specifically for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And Erica Mendez will also be part of that panel as well. So I've got for that, a little teaser into that. Yeah, I've got different scripts, games, Fire Emblem Awakening. What else? Yeah, generic, kind of game stuff. Pick up from How to Train Your Dragon. So it should be a good time. Well, unless there's any other. Oh, yes.
So you mentioned, you do animation, you do the directing, some translations, and you mentioned you've done commercial.
Yes.
Do you do anything else in the voiceover industry? Any e-learning, any audiobooks, anything like that?
I have done some audiobooks. I will say, audiobooks are by far my the weakest field as far as voiceover is concerned for me. It's by far the hardest, just because of how it's recorded and the kind of mental stamina you have to have. I am, they sort of compare audiobooks, if you're comparing audiobooks to animation, they say animation is doing the sprint, audiobooks is doing the marathon. I am much more trained and adept at doing the sprint. Being in a booth and just reading page after page after page, with trying to have minimal mistakes, because the more mistakes you make, the longer it takes. And audiobooks is it's kind of a weird field. It's one of the few where you're paid. Most types of voiceover jobs, you're paid by like the session or hourly. Audiobooks, you're paid by what's called the finished hour. So if it takes you 2 hours and then they edit it down to an hour of playtime, you get paid for that hour. So you're kind of incentivized to not take 5 times as long. That's just obnoxious as well for people engineering and editing, whoever's doing that. Sometimes people do it themselves, and that sounds tedious AF to me. But for me, that kind of mental stamina is like I get tired out and I start stumbling and I start switching words around and misspeaking things by the 10th page, and it's a disaster from there. When it comes to character dialogue, I'm quite good. But yeah, long form narration and just keeping it going for 4 or 6 hours, however long you can stay in there, get the book recorded. It's tough. My respect to people who do that on the regular. But that is not my thing. I've done it a little bit, but boy, it's tough. it's really hard. Let's see. Yes.
Any tea on Damian Moss?
Any tea? Oh yeah, that guy. Oh God, he's so bad and terrible and such a unpleasant guy. I can't believe. No, I adore him. I mean, I worked with him extensively, as you can imagine, on Delicious in Dungeon Meshi, and so talented, such a pleasure. Good, just a good guy. I'll work with him on anything. Great fellow. Love Damien. Yes.
Is audiobooks an area where you're finding a lot of competition as well, or is it more less competition?
Well, for me, because I don't compete in it much, I couldn't really speak to that with as much experience as I can other games or anime. But I would think so, that there's a fair amount. I mean, it's not unlike other areas of voiceover, but I think there are sort of the heavy hitters of the audiobook world. Certain readers, you see their names a lot because they're reliable, they're good, People like them. So, what's that? Sound booth theaters? I don't know them. Not sure.
Specifically, their main reader meant.
Okay, I'm not familiar with them, but yeah, that could be. I mean, I'm a colleague of mine, a friend, Barbara Rosenblatt does a lot of them. Not that I would be competing with her, typically. It's male read or female read. You're competing with people in that category. Yeah, I guess, to be honest, I don't know 100% how competitive. I would think, just because the whole business feels pretty competitive in general, I would think so. But in comparison to, say, a new syndicated animated show on Cartoon Network, maybe not quite as much. Yeah, that would be my gut feeling.
Sorry, I got right on. I meant Jeff Hayes.
Jeff Hayes. Okay, yeah, I don't know that name, but yeah, I could believe it. I think we're out of time. But yeah, thank you so much for all those great questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And yeah, again, if you're interested in kind of working out and maybe trying your own hand at voice acting, please come again to that panel tomorrow. Again, someone said 11 in the same, 11 o'clock in the same room. So yeah, hope to see some of you then. Thank you so much.